So, hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session on food for the heart. If you have seen the flyer, this session has been supported and partnered by two groups. One is Fun Food and Friends and the Food World. So, we have two people from the Food World group here, Miss Swetha and Chaitanya. So, I request Miss Swetha to say a few words just before we start.
Yeah, so hi everyone. This is the first session I'm attending with the PANversions. And Paniel, you're doing a great job. This is something that is the need of the hour, where you take care of yourself, and somebody who's coming and training people to take care of ourselves is the need of the hour, where people are getting sick every day. And yeah, this is a great move for the people who are in need, of course. And today I would like to wish all the best to Sheryl Alfonso, ma'am. I am sure that she'll be sharing some very great information and things, whatever is required about the session. And the session is all about food for heart. So this is the time when we need to keep our hearts very strong, mentally, physically. So yes, I wish all the best to Sheryl Alfonso, ma'am, and all the participants who have joined here. Of course, the food world, anything related to food and health, of course, will support you, panel. So all the best for your sessions, and looking forward to hear more about heart, how to take care of our heart. So what we need to eat, what not to eat. So I'm really excited about the session today.
Okay, great, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shweta. So before we go in, Fun Food and Friends actually is owned, or rather led by Deepthi Saket, but she couldn't, I don't think she has joined us. So if she joins us sometime during the session, I'll ask her also to speak a few words, but we'll move forward. And before we start the session, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today. Yes, great. Okay, so our speaker for today is Ms. Sheryl Afonso. Ms. Sheryl Afonso obtained her master's degree in food, nutrition, and dietetics from the University of Mumbai in 2000, following which she found immediate appointment as assistant professor in the subject at the Goa College of Home Science. Sheryl is presently the department head of the postgraduate degree Department of Food Technology at Carmel College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Nuam, Goa. And one of the subjects she loves teaching at the college has been clinical nutrition and dietetics. In the teaching profession for 2 decades, Ms. Afonso relishes the sense of fulfillment that accompanies interacting with young minds, and credits the career choice for keeping her constantly updated with the latest in all things concerning food, nutrition, and health. Co-owner of Norbert's Fitness Studio, a well-known chain of gyms in Goa, Sheryl is responsible for the creatives of the gym while also designing the diet plans that help one stay healthy for life. A healthy outside starts from the inside is Cheryl's motto that ensures she gets her daily dose of mental and physical activity by way of reading and exercising, along with a prescription amount of soul-satisfying food. Ma'am, thank you very much for being with us, for joining us today to share knowledge on food for the heart.
Yes, thank you, Paniel. And thank you, everybody, for joining in. I think the numbers are increasing on screen. And it's always encouraging to see people, coming and attending talks like this. Paniel had scheduled this talk for the end of January. And I think very aptly it got postponed to February, which is the month where everybody's heart goes for a toss, I think, considering that Valentine's Day is coming up in a week's time. Yeah. Okay. So let me not waste any more time. Let me go directly to my screen. Yeah. Well, before I go on to the details of, the diet, like everybody is really interested in knowing about what we should be eating and shouldn't be eating for the heart, a few facts about your heart. And as you can see out here, I think something here in the middle is something that, should really raise alarm bells for us, because we often look at food and possibly exercise as being most important for the heart. But the first thing that you can see here in the Did You Know Center is that bacteria can also be responsible for heart disease. And somewhere in the presentation, I'll be throwing a little light on this. aspect of how it can affect your health. Of course, we all know that the food we eat and the possible the habits that we choose to have, like smoking cigarettes or alcohol, can also deteriorate our heart in some way or the other. We all know, how important the heart is. Without your heart beating, there is no life at all. And you can see a few statistics out here which equate your heart to actually driving a truck for so many miles, that you can see out here about 5 facts about the human heart. Okay. So there's so much to the heart that is possibly not really known to the general public. And that's why it's important for us to keep this important organ of ours in the best shape at all points of time. Yeah. Males and females both are prone to developing heart disease. Many feel that males are at a higher risk of developing heart disease. And there is some truth to that, because females have what we refer to as estrogen, the female hormone, till you reach menopause, which sort of protects our heart from cardiovascular disease. Yeah. But once menopause sets in, the percentage of males and females actually suffering from heart disease are approximately the same, with actually studies showing us that maybe females are more prone to developing heart disease post menopause. Yeah. Okay. We go on to now understanding the heart. We all know that the heart is a pumping organ, right? That's the organ that pumps blood out of it, oxygenated blood out of it, so that it can go through the body carrying oxygen and nutrients along the way. And that's how every cell in our body has life. But did you know that the heart is also a muscle? We learned in school, in biology class, we learned about the chambers of the heart. And if you remember, there is the auricles and the ventricles, and we had the veins and the arteries, which were actually, the opposite, the function in the opposite way like the rest of the body. For example, we've all learned that arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood. But in the heart, it is reversed. The arterial veins, they carry oxygenated blood, and the arteries carry deoxygenated blood, or blood that does not have oxygen. So it goes to the lungs for purification. Okay. So that aspect of the heart we are very clear about, because we've studied it in biology. But the muscle out here is something that nobody really stresses upon in class or in school, unless you're possibly a medical student. And we fail to realize that we have something called a cardiac muscle, which is very important. And it's important to keep this muscle functioning properly at all points of time. Okay. Now let me look at some of the diseases that we are very, very familiar about. We've heard of heart attacks. I don't know how many of you all are familiar with this term, atherosclerosis. It seems like a very, very big word, but there's nothing big about it. What you see on the picture, the pictures are visible to you, right, Paniel? The slides are moving? Yep. Okay, thanks. Yeah. So what you see on this fair circular thing here, this is your, so to say, your virgin artery. When I'm born with such an artery, okay, which is clean at all points of time. As I keep eating solid food, there are deposits that form along the arterial lining. Okay. And this is what we refer as plaques. This is a very natural process. All of us start plaque formation from the time possibly we've started eating solid food. Okay. But the thickness of this plaque formation will happen much faster if your diet is not very clean. So you can see what's happening here. The plaques are depositing in one line, two lines, and then they are occluding or blocking the entire artery. What do you think is going to happen when we reach a situation like this? If you have a completely occluded or a completely blocked artery? Anybody?
Heart attack.
Okay, so what's a heart attack? No
Your
idea?
Heart
Yeah.
stops functioning
Okay, why do you think your heart stops functioning?
because the vessels are blocked.
So if the vessels are blocked, what is not moving forward?
Blood.
Blood is not moving forward. If blood is not moving forward, what will also not move forward? oxygen and nutrients. Okay, so you can see it in this picture here. I have a clean artery, blood moving forward very, very smoothly, no interference at all. I have plaque formation. So what's happening? The space or the diameter of my artery is narrowing. So blood is moving, but with more difficulty. And then I have a completely occluded or a completely blocked artery, which means blood will not pass beyond this point. So whatever is the portion of my heart beyond this point does not receive blood, does not receive oxygen, does not receive nourishment. So if there's no oxygen, there's no nourishment, that part of the heart dies, that muscle of the heart dies, and that is what you and I refer to in layman's language as a heart attack. Okay? So that is atherosclerosis, or a thickening of your arteries, which is responsible for heart attacks. Now, any idea why we speak about hypertension or high blood pressure in conjunction with our heart? Does everybody have a blood pressure? Yes? All of us have pressure. Why? Let me go back to this previous slide. The blood is moving. I have the linings of my arteries. So as something is moving along it, it is exerting pressure on the lining of the arteries. That is what is blood pressure in simple language. So all of us have something called blood pressure. Why will my pressure increase? Again, look at the same diagram. My blood is forcing itself through this very narrow space. Yes. So it's like a traffic jam. You have a traffic jam. Everybody is trying to push towards an exit point. The same thing is happening here. Everybody is losing tempers. And at the end of the day, you will just have a worse traffic jam, right? So the same thing happens here. The blood is still trying to push forward because it doesn't want to give up. It still wants to supply oxygen to that part of the heart. So when this happens, obviously the pressure on the lining of your arteries is going to go up. And that is what is referred to as hypertension. So if this happens day in and day out, constantly happening, what's going to happen to the muscle of your heart? It's going to get weaker. Yeah, because it's forcing, the movement is there with more pressure. And you know what happens when there is extra pressure exerted on anything in life. It's going to collapse at one point of time. And that is what is hypertension. So hypertension is nothing else but high blood pressure. That means the pressure on your arterial linings have increased because the flow of blood is no longer smooth and it has to push through with more effort. So this is going to damage the muscle of your heart, and your heart is not going to have a rhythm like it's supposed to have. Okay. Now in pressure, for everybody who has hypertension, you may be familiar with two terms, systolic and diastolic pressure. So we know that the heart fills up with deoxygenated blood. So it's in a relaxed state when it is filling up with blood. That is called diastolic pressure. Yeah. And that's a lower number, a smaller number. And when the heart has to pump the blood out to the rest of my body, that is called systolic pressure, or the higher pressure, a higher number that you get there. So you'll always have a reading of 120 by 80, 150 by 70, 160 by 90, etc. And this table shows you what's normal pressure, what's elevated pressure. Okay. Now consider this is my normal heart over here in the center of your screen. Yeah. Consider my heart with diastolic dysfunction. What is diastolic dysfunction? It means that when my heart is relaxed, it does not easily fill up with deoxygenated blood. And why does that happen? Because my heart muscle has become stiff. Why has my heart muscle become stiff? Because I'm constantly exposed to a situation of high blood pressure. Yeah. So the muscle has become stiff. So even when it is in a relaxed state, it is not able to properly fill up with deoxygenated blood, which means at the end of the day, oxygenated blood is not going to reach the rest of my body properly. So diastolic dysfunction is actually a more serious problem than systolic dysfunction. Systolic dysfunction is when my heart is pumping blood outside to the rest of my body. It's not able to do it efficiently. Now that is expected because my heart muscle may be weak. Okay. And therefore it is expected. But when I have diastolic dysfunction, it signifies that there is severe damage happening to my heart muscle, which I really need to be careful about. So although systolic blood pressure, that means something above 140, is something that we need to be concerned about, if you have a very high diastolic pressure, you need to be even more concerned about it. Okay. Now, another heart disease that we may not be very, very familiar with is something called rheumatic heart disease. Yeah. And we've possibly heard of rheumatic fever. And very surprisingly, you know, it's not to do with anything related to your diet as such, but a streptococcal infection. Streptococcus, you know, we often get a sore throat. Now in COVID times, we are always complaining the first symptom is a sore throat. It is a bacterial infection. Streptococcus is a bacteria. If you have repeated strep throat, okay, and how do we manage this? We often go to take OTCs, over-the-counter drugs, or we chew on strepsils or halls, and then we allow it to pass, or we do our salt water gargles, and we pay scant attention to it, not realizing that frequent streptococcal infections are the starting point for something called a rheumatic fever, and then a heart valve damage. And this is what is referred to as rheumatic heart disease. So nothing to do with the muscle of your heart, nothing to do with your arteries or veins of the heart, but the valves in your heart. The valves are like stoppers, okay, which prevent the blood from crossing chambers. Yeah, it prevents oxygenated blood from mixing with deoxygenated blood. So when these valves are weak, then there can be a mixing of this blood, increasing the pressure on your heart. And that is what is referred to as rheumatic heart disease. So murmurs of the heart, along with other symptoms like swelling, okay, can lead you towards a diagnosis of rheumatic heart disease. And the fourth disorder related to the heart is what we refer to as congestive heart failure. Now, this is where your lungs also come in. Remember, heart is an organ which receives impure blood or deoxygenated blood, sends it to the lung for purification. The lungs send it back to the heart, and then the heart pumps it to the rest of your body. Okay, so that's why we call it the cardiovascular system or the cardiorespiratory system. So my heart and my lungs are functioning together at all points of time. Yeah. So in congestive heart failure, when your heart is not able to properly pump blood out of it, this is generally associated when you have an electrolyte imbalance, a sodium-potassium imbalance. Okay, so your blood volume increases, as a result of which the lungs are also affected, and I have something called edema or fluid accumulation in my chest cavity. Yeah, and this is congestive heart failure. So you can see something called pulmonary edema out here, excess fluid in your lungs. So it has to do with your heart not being able to pump properly. Yeah, so that's my congestive heart failure. Again, you'll see swelling in your ankles and your legs. Okay, so coronary heart disease, hypertension, rheumatic heart disease, congestive heart failure. 4 things related to the heart. Yeah, these are some of the stages of congestive heart failure, where it starts off with something, you know, which you take for granted: breathlessness, tiredness, or maybe I'm out of condition, or maybe I'm very tired today after a very hard day at work. Okay, I start breathing faster. Maybe it's environmental pollution that's causing it. So we don't really go to, you know, look at why this is happening to our body. And we can suffer really serious consequences if we ignore it. Something like a continuous hacking cough also, or edema, and then we say, no, we've been working out for standing on our feet for too long. That's why there's edema. Okay, so these are things that you cannot and should not take for granted, especially as we age. Can I control this? Yes, I can control this. Obviously, being a nutritionist, I'm going to be speaking to you about how you need to be controlling this with the help of the food that you eat. Okay, so if there's something that you can control in your life, it is the choice of food. Nothing else. Maybe I can't control the fact that it's really cold right now and I still need to wear a sweater in February, but I can control what foods I put into my mouth. Okay, now we are all familiar with fats, and everybody tells us don't eat fat. But what should I be eating in order for my heart to stay healthy? I don't know how many of you have heard of this. Coenzym Q10, very, very important for your heart. All the functions of the heart, which I discussed in terms of coordinating with the lungs, okay, is because of coenzyme Q10. The muscle, the heart muscle functioning properly is because of coenzyme Q10. Yeah. So it's important that we make sure that we have these foods that you see on screen as an integral part of your daily diet, because they're really rich in coenzyme Q10. Soybean, broccoli, peanuts. Yes. 3 foods, vegetarian foods, and fish out here, along with oranges also. Very, very good source of coenzyme Q10 and needed to keep your heart functioning properly at all times. Okay. What's my second nutrient of choice is potassium. Now, you may be familiar with potassium if you have hypertension, because in hypertension, we've learned that sodium should be avoided in the diet, and sodium is salt. But I wonder how many of our doctors actually tell us that when we reduce sodium, we also have to increase potassium. Yes, because potassium is the mineral. Potassium along with magnesium are the 2 minerals which keep your heart functioning properly. Yeah. So make sure that you're eating enough of potassium by way of fruits. Fruits are your best sources of potassium. Banana has the best amount of potassium in it, along with potatoes, also a good source of potassium. Yeah. Like I said, magnesium, another mineral that we can't pay attention to. And often it's hidden because the doctor will prescribe you a multi-mineral or a multivitamin, and you don't even bother to find out why the multivitamin or why the multi-mineral, not understanding and realizing that if you just make a few changes in your diet, you can get all those minerals and vitamins from the regular foods that you eat. So magnesium, important for your heart at all points of time, required to keep your blood pressure under control and keep your heart muscle functioning properly. Where do I get magnesium from? All your seeds, the nuts, okay, quinoa, which is something come into the market with a bang today, oats, which has always been there and advocated as a heart healthy food. Yeah. Folic acid. Where have you ever heard about folic acid? Maybe the ladies can answer. Folic acid, ladies? No?
Folic acid supplements during the egg release, ovum release.
During pregnancy.
Egg release time.
Yeah. After that, have you ever bothered to continue having folic acid in your diet? Never, right? Because we've always been taught to associate folic acid with pregnancy, and that's it, to prevent neural tube defects in children. But folic acid is an important nutrient for the heart. And why is that so? And there is enough of research that tells us that the moment you eat enough of folic acid, my homocysteine levels go down. If my homocysteine levels go down, homocysteine is an amino acid. If those levels go down, my heart is in the best functional condition. Okay, so never stop having folic acid, please. Folic acid best sources would be anything that is dark green in color. Broccoli, kale, cabbage, okay, spinach, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, all of these are good sources of folic acid. And among the fruits, bananas have a good quantity of folic acid. Omega-3 fatty acids, everybody talks about omega-3 fatty acids. Yeah, and we know that fish is the best source of omega-3 fatty acids. We have to, of course, be careful about the manner in which we cook our food, because if we use too much, and that's my next slide, which I'll be discussing about with you, about the types of oils. So we can negate the good effects of fish simply by choosing the wrong quality and quantity of oil that or fat that we use in our cooking. So for the vegetarians, chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, excellent sources of omega-3 fatty acids. Make sure that it's there in your diet at all times. So many of us believe that fat is not essential, but fat is very much required for health. And you'll see that we have 4 types of fats. Unsaturated fats, 2 types of unsaturated, mono and poly. Then I have something called a saturated fat, and I have something called trans fat. Let me finish with saturated fat. Saturated fat is something that is solid at room temperature. Butter, ghee, margarine, these are saturated fats. I will find them in all my animal foods. Milk, the cream of milk is solid. That is saturated fat. Cheese, solid, saturated fat. Beef, the skin of your chicken, solid, saturated fat. What does it say here? Not so good for you. So obviously, I should be keeping this to a minimal. Trans fats today have taken the world by storm. You see the FDA also putting down regulations where every packet has to have a mention of the content of trans fats in it. This is a definite no-no, okay? Saturated fat, if you see, is not so good, whereas trans fat, definitely bad. No way that there should be any trans fat in your diet. So it's a hydrogenated fat. Where do I get it from? All your bakery products, commercial bakery products. Your biscuits, your cakes that are prepared commercially contain a lot of trans fats. If any of you are using Vanaspati Dalda trans fat, avoid it because it's doing your health a lot of damage. Okay, this is definitely a no-no for you. Yeah. What are my healthy fats? The unsaturated fats, the fats that are liquid at room temperature. So the oils that are used. So between the two of them, previously, we were brought up to believe that polyunsaturated was good. Today, science and nutrition tells us monounsaturated is better. Okay, so monounsaturated is the best for you, and polyunsaturated should follow. Okay, so what are my sources of my monounsaturated fats? Olive oil, but it's not something that I'm advocating at all because we're living in India, and in India, olive oil is not an indigenous oil. Okay. So my Indian counterpart for olive oil would be rice bran oil, would be mustard oil, would be sesame oil. These are monounsaturated fats. Okay. Polyunsaturated fats or oils would be your sunflower oil and your safflower oil that you use in cooking. So depending on the method of cooking that you're using, you can use a blend of mono and polyunsaturated fats. Yeah. Now, a quick look at cholesterol. Cholesterol is a cause of concern. I'm talking about dietary cholesterol, the cholesterol that I get from my diet. Yeah, I also have blood cholesterol, and obviously the total fat in my diet plus the cholesterol foods that I eat together will determine what my blood cholesterol levels are. Okay. Now, one thing that I need you all to remember is that cholesterol is a type of fat that is present only in foods of animal origin. So if you hear people telling you don't have coconut oil because it has cholesterol, please turn around and tell them that vegetarian foods do not contain cholesterol, and coconut is a vegetarian food. All the oils that you use in cooking are from plant sources, and plant sources do not contain cholesterol. So the oil that you use in cooking will not contain cholesterol, but if you use ghee and butter for cooking, that will definitely contain cholesterol because both of them are derived from milk, and milk is from an animal. So those foods will contain cholesterol. What you see on your screen are the richest sources of cholesterol. And if we have a heart problem or a cholesterol problem, these are the ones that you need to be avoiding for sure. Okay. So what do you do in terms of diet? Make sure there's a lot of fiber in your food, in your meals, fiber by way of fruits and vegetables. Make sure that you consume all those minerals that I spoke to you about. Don't forget folate, and keep cholesterol foods to a minimum. Yeah. And something that is also very important is this, the rainbow. Okay, we call this the nutrition rainbow. We're all fascinated with rainbows that we see in the sky, forgetting that, you know, we have a plethora of colorful vegetables and fruits surrounding us. Yeah. So each color of fruit and vegetable that I have in my market actually has a different role to play in the body. So it would do you well to remember that maybe you can designate each day of the week one color and decide to choose maybe yellow today. So you choose for your lunch and dinner something that has yellow in terms of a vegetable or a fruit. Tomorrow is red day, day after tomorrow is purple day. Make your life colorful and your heart will be colorful too. Okay. And the second thing that goes hand in hand with your diet is obviously exercise. Many of us shy away from exercising. Remember that exercising keeps your heart muscle. Remember, it's a muscle. Yes. So any exercise keeps muscle healthy at all points of time. It's also perfusing your lungs, which means it's making your lungs function better. Yeah. When you're doing any sort of an activity, you're automatically breathing in more oxygen that is clearing up your lungs and helping it to perform better. So whatever is your choice of activity, just choose it and do it because it's going to do your heart a whole lot of good. We all use fitness trackers today, okay? And we're very happy when we say, okay, we've done 4,000 steps today, we've done 5,000 steps today. For a healthy heart, studies have shown that you need to do about 10,000 steps. Of course, if you're an older adult, that needs to be checked, okay? And maybe a step count of 6 to 8,000 would be sufficient, yeah? Yes, and that's my last slide. And I think I want you all to focus on what's there in the center. Health is not a size, it's a lifestyle. So don't think that just because I'm slim and trim, I am healthy. You can be slim and trim and have an equal chance of dying of a heart attack compared to somebody who's obese or overweight, but is more active in terms of possibly doing some physical activity and choosing the right kinds of food, but is obese because of certain other medical issues. Yes. Paniel, I hope I've not overshot my time.
No, ma'am. Excellent. That was, you can stop the screen sharing. Yes, that was very informative. I learned, in fact, I was waiting to hear that. I heard the colors of the colors, the food colors. I had heard this in another presentation, but I forgot about it. Thanks for bringing that up again. That was informative. We'll take in questions now. I'm sure a few of you have questions. A few of you have sent your questions in the registration. Ma'am, have you addressed those or?
Yeah, I think the ones that you sent to me, right? There was one about rheumatic heart disease. Let me just check.
Rheumatic heart disease. How to control blood pressure? You said that. Are you going to give a diet plan?
Rheumatic heart.
To have a flawless skin.
To have a flawless skin is ensuring that you have a lot of water, adequate amount of sleep, exposure to sunlight. Remember, it's not going to damage your skin, but it's going to make it healthier. So at least 10 to 15 minutes exposure to sunlight. And then making sure that you consume, you know, when you apply creams on your skin, have you ever turned around the label of that cream container and read what are the ingredients? You will see vitamin A and you will see vitamin B in that. Okay. So if they're going to add those vitamins in the skin, in the cream, can I not add it on my plate? Okay. So for skin, it is vitamin A foods, very, very important. So anything that is yellow, orange, red, green, 4 colors for the skin.
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else with questions, please?
Yeah, there was something foods to avoid for hypertension aside from salt and red meat. So anything that contains sodium, basically. So pickles, then remember that, you know, all your baked foods contain baking soda, and baking soda and baking powder are sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate. So those are hidden sources of sodium. Bread that you eat has sodium in it. So these are few things that you definitely have to avoid. And of course, anything that is salty, anything that is preserved has to be avoided. But more importantly, you know, it's easier to say, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat. What should I eat should be the question. Yeah. So for people with hypertension, more of potassium and more of magnesium foods, and of course, fiber, important.
Okay, great, ma'am. Thank you very much. That was an amazing session. And I think it was very clear. And that's why we don't have any questions. So I'll keep in touch with all of you and let's meet again for more sessions like this. Thank you once again, Sheryl, ma'am, for the wonderful talk. And thank you for Fun Food and Friends and the Food World for supporting us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Good night.